Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. We have with me today Isha Azim from Racing with Isha. Mara Piacentino is here to discuss Formula One. I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you so much for tuning in to Grid Live Pre-Race. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You too can invest in the Grid Network. We'll mail you some Grid Network stickers. You want to do a one-time investment, you got a couple options. Buy me a coffee, put there a specific person you want to give coffee to. We'll forward them the funds and they'll thank you on the air, as well as YouTube Super Chat. And we do have our YouTube membership online as well. And simplest way to support us, hit the bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube, follow us across social media, and read our articles on gridranking.com. Let's start off with Formula One. Montreal, Quebec, home circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and the Canadian Grand Prix, this year's second race in North America, because we already had Miami. And this race has a history of being unpredictable until recently, where Max Verstappen has won the last 2 years. He's going to try to get a win, restart another winning streak, but Ferrari's coming off that win at Monaco with Charles Leclerc. Both of their drivers have won this year with Carlos Sainz earlier in the year. Charles Leclerc, McLaren, of course, Lando Norris, he won the first race in North America this year at Miami. He was looking really good in that first practice, but of course the conditions, we'll talk about that. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to Lando Norris and this race, he has never finished in the points. That was a shocking stat I saw when I was researching for this. And of course, fastest in the practice, but that was in the wet conditions at times. Isha, starting with you, can Lando Norris compete for the win this weekend?
Well, Joe, as you pointed out, this race is usually very unpredictable, especially when you put the rainy forecast into account. And so, Lando has been performing very well this season. He's already had his first win as well. But when it comes to this track, especially in the rainy conditions, I think it's very unpredictable and it's hard to say whether he will be able to compete for a win because looking at, FP1, he finished in first place, and then FP2, he was in last, he was in 20th. So I think it's very hard to say. I think it's going to depend a lot on quali and where he places himself on the grid, and I think that's going to give him a best shot of trying to at least score some points on Sunday.
Yes, I think he might have a chance to win this Grand Prix. Unfortunately, yesterday with all the rain, we could not really see the value of the car on this track. But I think that considering the last races where McLaren grew a lot, he might have a good chance to win. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Lando Norris, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out with the changing condition, because Fernando Alonso was the fastest in the second practice, which had wet weather towards the end of it. Today's weather forecast, it's overcast, but there's a chance of rain increasing later in the day. However, we know sometimes when they say there's only a 15% chance of rain, the rain will still show up and it will just change everything. Amara, I got to start with you with this question. Third practice, that's going to be coming up shortly. If that goes completely dry, does that help out Red Bull out of any other team? Or do you think the other teams will get more help knowing this is what could be race conditions, dry?
Well, it will help everybody. It will help Red Bull in particular because they had some issues. So they have to fix the car and set them rightly for this Canadian Grand Prix. But I guess that also Ferrari and McLaren are wishing for a dry session.
Yes, I completely agree with Mara. She said everything I was going to say. It would definitely help out Red Bull because they did have some issues with Max Verstappen's car earlier during the practice sessions. And then also because Ferrari and McLaren are like the top contenders for, being able to score more points and possible wins this season so far, I think that they would be next in line for receiving the most benefit from a dry race.
Yeah, when it comes to the rain, I'm thinking it's going to be really interesting to see if it does come out. But if it is going to be dry, it might be just business as usual for all the teams. Speak about business as usual. We know silly season is not exactly business as usual, but some key pieces came together. Sergio Perez will be in Red Bull for the next 2 years. The surprise I think a lot of people were talking about, Alpine and Esteban Ocon will split ways at the end of 2024. Yuki Tsunoda, many wondering what's going to be his future on Thursday. He said he would like to see, quote, see more commitment from the contract. He was hoping for a promotion up to Red Bull. If he stays at VCARB, where will he go in the future? Isha, starting with you, where do you think Yuki Tsunoda will end up in 2025?
This is something that I haven't thought too much about, but it's an interesting question because I think that Yuki Tsunoda could potentially stay with VCARB. But because both of the Red Bull contracts are already finalized, there's not much of a chance for him to be put into Red Bull. So I don't know if that would be the best decision if he is offered a contract by them. But I'm also thinking at a potential Alpine contract, perhaps. Those are the two that I'm thinking of right now.
I think that he will stay with Vicard. I don't see him actually going anywhere. The driver market is now crazy, and his name has never been really said by other teams. So I think he will stay there.
That'll be really interesting to see Yuki Tsunoda in the Alpine, that blue uniform. VCARB. I'm curious if Sergio Perez starts to fade, could there be a swap? So much unknown going into 2025 and beyond, especially for Yuki Tsunoda. It'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. With that said, let's start our for the final seat in Williams in 2025. Is Logan Sargent one of those drivers?
No, I don't think so. I think these two drivers might be Bottas and Sainz.
Oh, yeah, I think this is tricky. I was going to say perhaps, but I'm not really sure because, this is his second season and he hasn't made many improvements, so it's tough to say.
Pierre Gasly is losing his teammate Esteban Ocon. Do you think Gasly is more likely to stay or look at another seat and risk being Ocon's teammate again? Isha, what do you think?
I think he's more likely to stay with Alpine, but it also depends on how the rest of the season plays out.
Totally agree with her. He will stay.
Gene Haas sold off his NASCAR team in the process of getting that done. Could this indicate more funds for the F1 team, Mara?
Yes, that was my thought as well. They need to invest more if they really want to gain something for Formula One.
Yep, I 100% agree. I think that this could definitely mean more money for the F1 team.
George Russell is ahead of Lewis Hamilton by 8 points in the driver's standings. Can he expand that lead over Hamilton this weekend, Isha?
Yes, I think he can.
Agree. He will.
And Carlos Sainz, 1 point ahead of Sergio Perez, who leaves ahead in the point standing.
Carlos Sainz is more motivated. So, yeah.
I feel like Carlos Sainz too, but I don't know. With Sergio Perez's contract being renewed, maybe he'll be more optimistic and he'll feel less pressured. So maybe him, but I think it could go either way.
It'll be interesting to see how it'll go this weekend over in Montreal, Canada. One of the big things we're talking about from Montreal, Canada is a viral moment that occurred yesterday when Jacques Villeneuve, who of course is not short of any opinions, was invited to be part of the Sky Sports team this weekend, and he roasted Daniel Ricciardo on the air, pretty much asking why is he still in F1. Now, Villeneuve's claims against Daniel Ricciardo are the following. Essentially, he beat out or burned out Sebastian Vettel, who then left for Ferrari. He beat out Max Verstappen when he was 18 years old for only half a year. Once he left, he hasn't beaten any teammates, and his image kept him in F1 more than his actual results. Now, in all fairness, Ricciardo did beat Esteban Ocon and Nico Hulkenberg at Renault during the 2 seasons there. We know he won in Monza, but since then, not much to show since that 2021 win at Monza. This year, the only time he has scored points has been the sprint race in Miami, 4th place. People thought he was back. No points again since then. Mara, does Jacques Villeneuve have a valid point that Ricciardo shouldn't be kept in F1?
Yeah, Villeneuve's comments are always pretty confidential. But yeah, I think that he spoke the truth, honestly. He really said everything correctly. And with all the good drivers that we see, young drivers, I'm referring to Antonelli, Duan, Schwarzman, why should we keep Ricciardo in Formula One? So yeah, I kind of agree with him.
Yeah, I agree. He said something that everybody's thinking, but nobody else is saying out loud. And Mara makes a very good point that, you know, it's not a question of whether Ricardo deserves a seat in Formula One or not, but it's a question of whether there's other talented young drivers who have a lot more potential who deserve that seat. And I think that, as Mara pointed out, there's so many names in F2. Who could potentially be brought up to F1 and that I think they would perform well too. Like, when we brought in Ollie Behrman and he put up a great performance as well. So I think that these younger drivers need to be given a chance, and that can only happen if some of the older drivers let go of their seats.
Yeah, it's only 20 spots. Drivers are coming up. Daniel Ricciardo still there. It'll be interesting to see how he performs this weekend. Does he respond back in a positive way, or does he add more fuel to the fire to Jacques Villeneuve's points? In the chat room, Adam asks, your take on the F1 rule changes for 2026? I personally like them now. Of course, those rule changes, the new car coming out, shorter, a bit more narrower, a different drag reduction system with the front wing, rear wing. Isha, starting with you, what are your takes on these rule changes for 2026?
Yeah, usually when the rule changes come out, they're a little bit iffy and, some people have some problems with them, but I feel like these ones were pretty decent. I think I agree with Adam, I think I did like these, especially reducing the size of the car, making it smaller and narrower. That's definitely going to help with overtaking, especially on smaller, tighter circuits like Monaco. And so I think I also like the rule changes.
Be interesting to see. Mara, your thoughts on the rule changes for 2026?
Yeah, I think as Isha was saying, the fact that they are going to be shorter and lighter, it could help. I'm not really sure about the DRS cancellation and all that new things that they have added. I think the driver will have much more work during the race, especially. But then again, we have seen many changes in the cars, and these are just the proposal that the FIA gave. Now they have to discuss them. So it's really not everything that we are going to see in the next years. So let's wait for it.
Be interesting to see how this all play out for the next 2 years as it keeps getting adjusted here and there, the teams. And of course, a lot of people wondering, could we have a 11th team on the Formula One grid by then? Be sure to subscribe to us right here in the Grid Network so you don't miss any of those news updates. We'll be covering it right here. Isha, let's switch over to IndyCar, a big race we're covering this weekend.
That's right, Joe. The NTT INDYCAR Series is at Road America. And Joe, some big news broke out as the teams got ready for Road America. Now, David Malukas is back and appears to be the permanent replacement for Tom Blomqvist for the rest of the year. Nolan Siegel replaced Augustin Canapino for the weekend following news that McLaren no longer has a commercial alliance with Junko Hollinger Racing. Now, Augustin Canapino is taking the weekend off after the backlash, following contact last week with Theo Pourchaire. Now, Joe, starting with Malukas, how big of a break is this for him to know that he's being able to come back and especially to Laguna Seca for a race?
It has to be very motivating for him to be coming back and potentially rebuild that relationship he had with the folks over at Honda. We know he was with Dale Coyne Racing HMD program, which this morning, HMD dropping the news that they're not going to be working with Nolan Siegel for the rest of this weekend. Could be implications long term. Nothing official yet, but some big news from HMD. So for David Malukas, if you can rebuild that relationship with them, that'd be a huge win. Meyer-Shank Racing, we know they have the speed. Felix Rosenquist has shown that. This is a team where they had a rookie driver. It's debatable if they gave that rookie driver, Tom Bloomquist, a fair shot. We know the first race he ever did in Toronto got taken out on the first lap, first corner. Crash occurred to him that he was not at fault of. But it seemed like that Indianapolis 500 first lap, first corner crash that he essentially caused really, I think, destroyed the confidence, which is very unfortunate. But overall, this is one of those sports where you got to perform, you got to do your best because somebody could take your spot. David Malukas, a lot of people may say it was fair or unfair how he lost his ride with McLaren. At the end of the day, this is an opportunity to get back in, rebuild those relationships with Honda. Potentially, if he does good enough, he could have a full-time ride next year with them.
Yes, definitely. And now, while this is some great news for David Malukas, another driver, on the other hand, Canapino, has some bad news. So he's out this weekend, Joe. And how ugly and costly do you think this is becoming for the team and for IndyCar?
This has become a really ugly situation. And it's just very unfortunate that this is sort of one of the big headlines for Road America. Road America is one of these races where fans flock to every year. Good turnout, great racing. This is really a driver's track where just about almost anybody could win. There's still a lot of limitations. It's a road course, but it's very competitive with plenty of great overtaking opportunities. It's just so unfortunate that for the second year in a row, we're talking about a driver receiving death threats after making contact with Agustin Canapino. This has led to the alliance between Juncos Hydrogen Racing, Arrow McLaren, to be essentially terminated immediately as soon as they released that tweet, that statement out this week. And then just as it looked like Canapino was going to still show up a race, he was there at the track in an autograph session. He's not going to be racing. Nolan Siegel, opportunity for him at the expense of all this going on. And I think this is just something IndyCar, it was talked about on Grid Tonight earlier this weekend. Does IndyCar need to step in because this is the second year in a row a driver's receiving death threats? I feel IndyCar really needs to evaluate their role as a sanctioning body and their relationships with the teams. We know last year when the first time it occurred, we were hoping this was just going to be an isolated incident when people were sending threatening messages to Callum Ilott. But then it happened a second time. IndyCar, Juncos Hydrogen Racing need to be a lot more. This is unacceptable. Stop. When you look at the online activity, that just complicates everything. People will always speculate. Why didn't this person tweet this? Why didn't this person do this? Why did this person like this message? It's one of those deals where this is just very unfortunate for a year where IndyCar seems to have the highest of high moments, such as the Indianapolis 500, great ratings, but then the lowest of lows, the cheating mess from Team Penske, the low ratings at Long Beach. Now this is being thrown in, and we're coming off a Detroit race which didn't exactly give the IndyCar Series the best image possible. I think this is just something where IndyCar has to evaluate, okay, we need to step on this more if something like this occurs. I know last weekend when Santino Ferrucci made those homophobic comments about Kyle Kirkwood and Colton Herta, IndyCar said they were investigating, but I think IndyCar could have been a lot more vocal of they don't stand for this. This does not represent IndyCar values. Santino did apologize, but IndyCar, I think, needs to take a bigger step when it comes to controlling what's going on, controlling the message, because we should be talking about a lot more of this race. But unfortunately, everybody, all the news outlets, this is a big thing. And Canapino's sitting out. Nolan Siegel's in. A business deal has been terminated. And I really just think this is not over yet. I don't think it's just going to be done after this weekend. We move on. I'm thinking there's going to be more breaking news and changes in the coming few weeks.
Yes, definitely, Joe. As you said, IndyCar really needs to put in a lot more effort and be vocal about these issues and about how they deal with it. I think it really is affecting their image, and so they really need to work on this. But anyways, taking a look at the practice sessions now, Alex Palou was the fastest in the first practice, ahead of Colton Herta and Santino Ferrucci. Newgarden was in fourth, Dixon sixth, O'Ward in ninth, and Alexander Rossi in 15th. Now, the second practice had rain and a red flag did come out. So, Joe, how did the field shake out after the second practice?
Second practice, Colton Herta, fastest willpower, and Christopher Rasmussen, third fastest. What an effort by him. Probably feeling good, especially after Indy 500 Detroit. That was a rough weekend, but this has to feel good. I think this is sort of part of why Road America is so popular. When you look at Alex Palou, he is down in 15th, but overall, he ran a few laps compared to the top drivers. Most people ran between 9 to 10 laps because of the red flag, the wet weather conditions. But overall, some of the familiar names in the top 10, Scott McLaughlin, you have him in fifth. Marcus Ericsson almost won Detroit. If he had a few more laps, he probably could have. Sixth. Graham Rahal looking to just have some good weekends here and there. Seventh. Rossi, eighth, so he rebounded. And Theo Pourchaire, Ryan's VK, rounded your top 10. One of the big things, Scott Dixon, he only put out there 4 laps, so he's way down in the running order, 25th after the practice session. And then Nolan Siegel, 27th, 4 laps. But of course, he just got the call to, hey, you're in this seat. Let's try to get the seat fitted to you. Hop on in. His teammate Roman Grosjean, 13th. So overall, a lot going on. I think this session is not truly reflective of everyone's pace, potentially more yesterday's, but it'll be interesting to see how the weather plays out at Road America.
Yes, definitely. Now, Road America is, of course, one of the popular stops in the IndyCar calendar, which is an interesting stat since IndyCar came back in 2016. The winner has come from top 10. Now, however, every position except 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th have at least one win. The last 3 years, 4 to 5 full course cautions in each race. So, Joe, what makes IndyCar at Road America such a popular race that brings a strong showing of fans each year?
When you compare it to other road course races where the winner is going to be from the front row, compared to Road America, where ever since IndyCar started coming back, the winner is going to be at least from the top 10. It really shows that this is a very racy track because when you look at the winner, yeah, they've all come from the top 10, but from various spots. I mean, it's sort of surprising that only a driver that has started 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th has not been able to go on to win this race, but a 9th place starter has, a 7th place, a 5th place. So they're very capable of just having that good, perfect day at Road America. That good, perfect day, though, could be a little bit of weather. It's been a while since we saw a wet race at Road America. One of the all-time kart classics was a wet weather race there, where we saw a lot of drivers having issues and then essentially the Pac West team having some good fortune there. So this track has a long history when it comes to open wheel racing. From the kart days to when the Indy Car Series came back, it still puts on a really good show. If you're starting outside the top 10 and even the top 20, you can still get in the top 10, have a good, strong finish. Scott Dixon last year started way back outside the top 20. He came out, finished in the top 5. This race has plenty of overtaking opportunities, plenty of areas to make mistakes, and you don't exactly have those long runoff areas. Some areas, you touch the grass, you're going to go spinning, you're going to lose positions. This track, such a long track with some sweeping corners here and there, some 90-degree corners. I feel it's just the perfect road course for just about any series. I know when we talk about NASCAR next, they had a couple of races here, especially with the Xfinity Series. Always people tuned in to watch it. This is just a perfect racetrack. I would love to see, this track have more events, but The big thing for me, I feel IndyCar, Road America, this is the best combination because the field is so competitive. If you throw there the element of weather or a caution that comes out and it becomes a fuel mileage race, it could open the door to a very unpredictable winner. This is why people come in to watch this race. We saw a huge line turnout for the autograph session. Great turnout already. This is one of those tracks where keep it on the schedule forever. The cars, it seems no matter what it is, champ cars, the old kart, Indy cars, they always seem to put on a good show. And I think a lot of it is just the way this track and the combination of the cars with the horsepower, the weight, and the downforce, it just makes a phenomenal show.
That's right, Joe. And that is all for our IndyCar section. So now let's switch over to NASCAR. So the Sonoma Raceway is once again hosting the NASCAR Cup Series. The Toyota SaveMart 350 and Martin Truex Jr. are looking to win here again. He has multiple wins at Sonoma and is looking for his first win of 2024. So, Joe, what do you think of his chances for this weekend?
I like Martin Truex Jr.'s chances of winning this weekend. He has to be feeling pretty good, pretty confident. I feel compared to past couple of seasons where he'll seem to be hit or miss, this year is not exactly as strong as last year where it was a hit and then the playoffs it just slumped down. He is just consistently there. He just has to put himself in the right spot towards the end. How do you do that? Well, we have the stage breaks again, so you could always work the strategy, whether it's getting the stage points in the first stage and then coming in and then sacrificing stage two, or sacrificing stage one, win stage two, and then go out there and try to get the win in stage three. It's going to be really interesting to see what his team decides. I feel the winning strategy is going to probably be somebody that's going to sacrifice stage one points. I think that's what Martin Truex Jr.'s team is going to be looking at if they're up towards the front. Of course, qualifying practice, once we see how they all shake up, that'll be the true indicator of where Martin Truex stands. But overall, compare him to his teammates, Joe Gibbs Racing, the Toyota stable. He's my number one driver. When you look at the Chevrolet Ford drivers, I say he's easily one of the top 5 drivers that could win this race.
Now, last week's surprise winner, Austin Cindric, locked himself in the playoffs, looking to make it 2 in a row and has one top 5 finish at Sonoma in 2022. However, the last time a Penske driver in NASCAR won at Sonoma, it was 2011 with Kurt Busch. So, Joe, do you anticipate any Penske driver fighting for a win this weekend?
Potentially Joey Logano, and I'll even put Joey Logano ahead of Austin Cindric. I know a lot of folks consider Austin Cindric a road course racer, but his results here haven't exactly shown compared to Joey Logano. Has top 5 finishes here, has finished in the top 10. He knows he could win. He did that at North Wilkesboro. Here, we got a brand new paved track. Tire wear, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue unless we have a repeat of a super soft tire or some weird conditions, and you get a repeat of Bristol. Logano has to be, I think, the prime driver in the Penske stable that could go out there and get the win. The second driver, I think that is questionable between Blaney and Cindric because Blaney, he could run a good race here, but I feel Logano out of the Penske drivers is the better shot at winning.
Definitely. Now, Kyle Larson was granted a waiver this week after missing the Coca Cola 600, so he will be contending for the championship with his teammates William Byron and Chase Elliott. Teammate Alex Bowman is winless, and his best finish here was ninth in 2021 and 2018. So, after this weekend, only 10 races. Do you think the pressure will build on Bowman to win?
The pressure, I believe, has already been building, especially after Chase Elliott got that win at Texas Motor Speedway. Alex Bowman, he could win. It's just putting together that right combination of strategy, a little bit of luck, having a fast car, having everything go perfect because it's so hard to win these Cup Series races. I don't think he should be trying to put himself under pressure because he could still get in through the points. I know we're going to have, after this race weekend, 10 races left, but if he could just continue putting together top 10 finishes, scoring stage points, he could be one of those drivers where as some of the leaders are pitting because they're thinking about the race wins, he could stay out, try to get those stage points. If he could win a stage, get that playoff point, that would be huge. So it'll be really interesting to see how his team plays the strategy this race weekend. I don't anticipate he's going to be putting pressure on himself. But outside, I think when it comes to especially people following motorsports, Mr. Hendrick, they want to see him win. They want to see him get into the playoffs. If he could get there in points, great. But if he doesn't get there through wins, he'll be lacking those playoff points. He could be lacking those stage points, and it's going to be a hard road in the playoffs for him. So it'll be really interesting to see how he performs and how everyone reacts to his performance as we get closer to the playoffs.
That's right, Joe. And after this weekend, the one remaining road course is Chicago in July. Daytona will be unpredictable and potentially the Brickyard 400 as well. Now, the next race weekend is at Iowa, the first for the Cup Series. So, do you think this summer stretch will separate the teams from the top level, like Joe Gibbs and Hendricks, from the smaller teams like Front Row and Legacy Motorsport?
Yes, usually it does. This is a pretty hard stretch of races. Now, of course, there will be a break with the Olympics coming in, but this is where I feel a driver that's potentially championship caliber really starts to shine. That's why I'm looking at Hendrick Motorsports, looking at Joe Gibbs Racing. Those are easily the top two teams right now this year in the Cup Series. When it comes to Front Row, Michael McDowell's going to be a driver everyone's going to be watching this weekend. He could have a good, strong race here and there, but I think as we go longer into the stretch of races, that's where him and that team's going to fall behind a little bit. Legacy Motor Club, even 2311, I'll put them in this same group as well too. They have great equipment, but they still lack some of the resources, some of the notes, the technical experience as Joe Gibbs Racing. So they could have a strong race weekend here or there, but they might fall a little bit behind to Joe Gibbs Racing, to the big teams. What's really interesting is Ford, because Penske, they right now seem to be the top Ford up there with Roush, Fenway, Keselowski Racing, RFK. Chris Buescher could get a win at this weekend in just about any track. Brad Keselowski has been really running well. But then you have the smaller teams, Wood Brothers Racing, Front Row. They have that alliance with Penske. But I think just like Legacy, they're just missing that lack of a technical experience, the race notes. That's where I think they're going to still fall behind. But it'll be really interesting to see how they handle everything. End of the day, I think once we get toward Darlington, which is the cutoff race, it's weird to say it's not Daytona, we're going to see where you're going to have the usual teams up front. Some surprises here and there, potentially, especially if we get a surprise winner at Daytona this weekend. But it's going to be, I think, the same where is the top two teams of Hendrick Gibbs, throw in there Penske, Roush Fenway, and then everybody else.
Yep, now that's all for our NASCAR section. Let's bring Mara in for Pick a Winner, where we can score some points ourselves.
Oh,
Yes, now it's time to play with Pick a Winner. And so we have three categories this time. It's Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR. So let's start with you, Isha. Who will win the Formula One Grand Prix in Canada?
Usually the philosophy has been when in doubt, Verstappen it out. But I don't know. I think I'm probably going to give up my point saying this, but I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc.
wow. I think you said it because I was just thinking, who'd I go with? I think I might go with Oscar Piastri for the win.
Go with Leclerc as well. And then we have Formula One 7th place.
Something weird that I found is that anytime you say Hamilton for 7th place, it usually ends up happening for some reason. So I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton.
I think I'll go with Sergio Perez, 7th place.
7th place for me is Sergio Perez as well. Then IndyCar, Isha.
IndyCar, I'm going to go with Alex Palou.
I'm going to go with Scott Dixon, Alex Palou's teammate. Make it 2 in a row.
Okay, so Dixon's. And NASCAR.
NASCAR, my pick is Martin Truex Jr.
I think it might be anonymous. I think Martin Truex Jr. is the best bet.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. So we are done with pick a winner.
It's going to be really interesting to see how all the races turn out this weekend. And of course, a friendly reminder to everyone, Grid Life wrap-up will be coming up Sunday. So we'll recap NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One, plus the latest on-grid ranking as well. So it'll be really interesting to see our predictions. Surprise, I can't remember the last time we did F1 and nobody picked Max Verstappen for a win. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Adam, he went with Verstappen, Hamilton, Scott McLaughlin, and Kyle Larson. All good picks. And of course, we'll recap it all tomorrow on Grid Life Wrap-Up. For Isha and Mara, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.